Be one, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Black Logic. So today we're going to tackle the war on woke, the definition of woke, because a lot of different sources have implemented the social justice term and verbiage inside of it, which is kind of deflecting from the true meaning of woke. So let's go through this very quickly. This won't be long. Woke, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, aware of and actively attentive to important societal factors and issues, especially issues of racial and social justice. Family, right off the bat, this definition is absolutely, unequivocally wrong as soon as they use the word and social justice. The term woke was never to be used in a social manner, dealing with people's right to identify as anything in any sex or things that occur in capitalism or socialism, none of those things. It was essentially being aware and attentive and actively attentive to the racial issues in America when it deals with black people, because not only was it created by us, and we coined this. So when you hear, whether it be Republicans or Democrats, use the term woke, they're saying to black people, we are anti-woke, we want to stop woke, and that's why people like Ron DeSantis created the Stop Woke Act, the Stop Black People Act. Because here's the thing, if your people have created a certain thing, and then the white racist GOP uses that term to target black folk, as well as the Democrats. See, the Democrats have slutted out the word. They had stretched the word. They have been using this word, and the GOP is just attacking it. But again, this is all anti-black. Let me move on. Woke, according to the Urban Dictionary, and it states here, this term became popularized. Initially, the meaning of this term was when an individual became more aware of the social injustice, which is when we talk about social injustice, you can group in a lot of other things. When a person became aware of the anti-blackness in America, that is what woke simply is, right? Then it says, or basically any current affairs related like bias, discrimination, or double standards. No, that is the definition. When someone came inertly aware and actively attentive of bias, discriminatory acts, and racism and the system of white supremacy and anti-blackness in the United States of America. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with social injustice, because that encompasses and that groups everybody. This is a term that was created and coined by black folk. Let's go a little deeper. According to USA Today, what is the meaning of woke once a term used by black Americans is now a rallying cry for GOP? So anytime I see that and they don't include the Democrats, I automatically know what this person is right here, and we can see the name, I'll move on. It states, during the 2023 Conservative Political Action Conference, speaker after speaker attacked woke ideology. Nobody knows what it is, right? In their speeches to conservative activists, Republicans presidential candidates Nikki Haley decried wokeness as a virus. You know, we have all these terms, wokeness, the woke virus, wokeism, all these terms that the Democrats and GOP, mostly the GOP on this one, have created, and also critical race theory. All of these terms, all of these amalgamations, all these different transformations of the term woke that back in the 1930s, our ancestors created to have our people to be woke of the situations in which we are. We must go back of the racial bias and discriminatory and double standards of anti-blackness here in America. That is the term woke. There has nothing to do with LGBT, has nothing to do with capitalism. It simply has to do with anti-blackness here in America. I'll move on though. It states that Republicans have declared war on woke capitalism. They're now using this word in every iteration in the very fabric of America, which makes no sense because the term woke doesn't mean any of these things. And even introduced legislation like the Stop Woke Act in Florida, an acronym for Stop the Wrongs to Our Kids and Employees. So now they're saying that the term woke that gave black people a sense of empowerment of knowing the situations in which we live, of the biased, discriminatory, and racist acts of this country, has now been slutted out to everything else. Now we're talking and grouping in, oh, Stop Woke Act because things occurring to our kids because of woke. Because of black people waking up, because of black people understand this discriminatory system, whether it be Democrat or Republican. That's what you're talking about? You're talking about the racial bias in this country? Is that what you're talking about? Because all these other things they're grouping in, family, has nothing to do with the organic definition of woke, okay? I'll skip down here a little bit. The uptick on exonerating woke ideology has increased in recent years among politicians, including former President Donald Trump, as Americans across the nation battle over diversity, inclusion, and equity efforts in the workforce. Okay? Moving right along, let's go down here a little bit. Woke capitalism. While Republicans aren't winning over investors in war against ESG and woke big business, family, are you seeing a repeatance here? Are you seeing this being very repetitive, how they keep using the term woke? And they're making the term woke evil, but the white supremacists know they're talking about black folk, right? Because there's no secret where the term woke came from. There's no secret who created the term woke, who actually gave it this different definition of being attentive, being actively attentive and aware of the environment and the social construct of the anti-black narrative that these politicians on the left and the right, the donkey and the elephant, the red and the blue, have used in order to demonize black folk. It says here, but black Americans have used the term woke since at least the early to mid 20th century to mean being alert to racial issues. Again, even the author used social injustice. Again, when you say social injustice, I know they're talking about the environment, but I want to keep it very concentrated. I want to keep it very direct. It's about race. It's about you being black. It's about being discriminatory. It's about being biased. It's about having implicit bias and giving excuses to those who use it. This is about the system of white supremacy and how it operates and can be right on both sides of the fence and change the definition and terms and everybody socially accept it. Because I hear black folk even using the term woke 1,000% incorrectly. Now, when we talk about the etymology of words, the root word itself, in the first original definition of woke, right? Awaken, okay? Being eyes open, essentially. That's what we're referring to. It states here, a version of the term was first used by Pan-African Marcus Garvey as early as 1923. It was later popularized by blues artists such as Lee Belly, who used it when singing about the Scottsboro Boys, a group of non-black teenagers who were falsely accused of raping two white women. Where's Dr. Umar Johnson when you need him? On a train in Northeast Alabama in 1931. At the BLM movement began after police killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson in 2014, woke expanded outside of black communities into the larger public lexicon. That means inside of the larger public social language, the vernacular, vocabulary, okay? When they're talking about lexicon. What about stay woke? Black artists and entertainers continue to insert the phrase in their music, including Grammy award-winning artist Erykah Badu and Childish Gambino, right? Because Erykah Badu had that woke song, and Childish Gambino had that stay woke, bamba. I don't know the words, but anyway, you know what song I'm talking about. But here's a little piece here I think you guys may find interesting. It says, yet woke has now been hijacked by the political right to mean something far from its original definition. And when they talk about the political right, they're referring to the Republicans, but I'm telling you, family, it's both the Republicans and the Democrats, okay? The reason why we have to stay woke is because of exactly what these people are doing right now. which is finding very insidious ways to undercut our rights, said Terry Givens, a political science professional at McGill University. Givens called the attacks on the term a full-on dog whistle and pointed to attempts to limit the right to vote, curtail reproductive and abortion rights, and ban inclusive education in schools as examples of the backlash against Black and brown civil rights. Family, as I told you before, can we go back to who wrote this article? As you're now seeing, even in the someone trying to explain what woke is and what woke isn't, aren't you guys noticing something here? Let me go back to the author. Here's the author, family. Mabaniti, I don't even know how to pronounce the name, but I'm going to go off on a limb. I didn't do my research. That's my disclaimer. I'm going to go off on a limb, and I'm going to tell you that I don't believe she's a foundational Black American. She's definitely not a foundational Black American. Let me go back now. Right? Again, the reason we have to stay woke is because of exactly what these people are doing right now, okay? Just remember this sentence right here. The reason why we have to stay woke is because of exactly what these people are doing right now. It goes on to say that is a full-on dog whistle and pointed to attempts to limit the right to vote. Woke has nothing to do with voting directly. It has nothing to do with reproductive and abortion rights. Again, this term was created back in the 1920s, came more popularized in the 1930s, and then revisited the scene during the Ferguson riots, okay? So when we look at this, family, it had nothing to do with none of these things. It had everything to do with discrimination and racism, about being woke and the discriminatory acts of this country against Black people, against Black Americans. It had nothing to do with necessarily voting, okay? We were always fighting for the right to vote, but we didn't use that term in those regards. We didn't use those terms because of abortion, because people wasn't really getting abortions back in the 1920s and 1930s. So even the author who wrote this, who was a non-foundational Black American, right? But again, they put a face on it, is now mix and matching the term woke with the very same things they accuse the Republicans of using, as well as the Democrats, right? It says, and pointed to attempts to limit the right to vote, curtail reproductive and abortion rights, and ban inclusive education in schools as examples of the backlash against who? Black and brown civil rights. Family, listen to me. Listen to me, please. There's no Black and brown civil rights, family. During this time and in these reference, we're talking about Black civil rights. We're not talking about Black and brown civil rights. We're absolutely not. And that's when you know that this person who wrote this is a Democratic shield. They're doing the bidding by the way of USA Today in order to write this pup piece to once again fool and trick Black people with the whole Black and brown coalition of civil rights. No, family, no. Do you think there was a larger mass of Hispanic people here in the 1920s? Well, it wasn't. Do you think there was a larger mass of Hispanic people here in the 1930s? No, it wasn't. Not the 1940s, not the 1950s, not the 1960s. Then we started getting around to the 1970s, and then we started seeing an increase of Hispanic population. But not when this term was created and when this term was coined. So even with this, we have to stay focused, family. We have to understand how these political parties are doing and saying and posting and showing any and everything to get our vote for what? For absolutely nothing. They want your vote, but they aren't going to give you anything. They use symbolism like giving Sean Puffy Combs the key of New York City. What does that do for Black people? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing, family. Trying to define the term woke like you on the side of black people. What does that do? Absolutely nothing, especially when you start putting in things like, oh, the right to vote and to curtail reproductive abortion rights and limiting school education and also on the black and brown community. See, some of you may think when they're talking about the black and brown community that they are referring to black people who are brown too. No, they're not. They're not talking about them, family. They're talking about Hispanic folk. They may even be talking about Indian folk, but they're definitely not talking about black people, because even Hispanics, like Ocasio-Cortez, she refers to her community as the brown community. So we know they're not talking about black people. And they always have to group black and brown people together where we know there's no coalition, there's no unity when it comes to us, because they make a direct and clear separation from us. So I looked up the term woke on another platform as I'm ending here. The term woke is an adjective that means aware of and actively attentive to important facts and issues when it comes to race. It states that it originated in the African American vernacular English in the 1930s as a way of describing being aware of and attentive to issues of racial prejudice and discrimination. One more time. Racial prejudice and discrimination. Not abortion, not education, and not voting. But now we understand, ever since the early 2010s, so to speak, the term came to be used more broadly to describe an awareness of and activism around social inequalities such as sexism, homophobia, and transphobia. What does any of those terms have to do with black people? What does the right to vote have to do directly to black people, right? Because in some regards, they're trying to curtail a lot of people who are not going to vote Republican and have them to diminish and decrease their votes as well. So that's inclusive to everybody. When it comes to reproductive, that is inclusive to everybody. When it comes to education, yeah, that's most directly pointed at black people. So we can go off on a limb and say that. But family, these are all inclusive terms of using the term woke in its wrongful definition, right? Sexism, homophobia, transphobia, that has to do with everybody. That means black, white, Hispanic, Asian, and otherwise. Because the term woke is often used in positive ways to describe people who are knowledgeable about and engage in racial justice. But, however, we understand that it's been used in negative ways to describe people who are seen as being too sensitive or political correct, right? Too sensitive. Oh, you're just being woke. Oh, that's wokeism. That's wokeness. They got all these dog whistle terms and dumbass definitions of the term woke, family, and it's quite easy. The term woke is quite easy because nowadays you can kind of use woke in different ways, right? You can say the woke generation is demanding change, the woke generation. The black generation, again, don't forget that the word woke in these terms are synonymous with using the term or word black, meaning black people. She's a woke activist who fights for racial justice. What? She's a black activist who fights for racial justice. The black generation is demanding change. So I'm giving you these sentences and I'm gonna just replace it and see and play this out with me, okay? Let me give you another one. He's so woke that he won't use any products that aren't tested on animals, right? Now they're talking about vegans are woke. But let's just change the word woke with black. He's so black that he won't use any products that are tested on animals. Some people criticize woke culture for being too censorious. Some people criticize black culture for being too censorious. This is where we are, family. as I gave the term woke many a times, now you and I both understand that none of these definitions that these people have come up with means woke at all. If anything, this is the closest you're going to get when it comes to the term and the definition of woke by alleviating the term social justice, social injustice. Just replace the term social with racial. But basically it states here, affairs related like racial bias, discriminatory acts or discrimination, and double standards. If you had to look up this term, because Merriam-Webster, as we stated before, they're talking about social justice as well. Again, this term came back in 1923. It got popularized in 1930. But we understand that basically the term woke is being aware and actively attentive to the important racial anti-black perspective and narrative that we have in the United States of America. Understand discrimination, understanding bias and implicit bias and all these other things relating to black people and the anti-black narrative in the system of white supremacy here in the United States of America. So the next time somebody asks you to define woke, please, my beautiful black people, don't bring up abortion. Don't bring up the right to vote or voting rights. Don't bring up veganism. Don't bring up things being tested on animals. Don't bring up the education system. Honor our forefathers and our ancestors by letting people know that the term woke is now become a dog whistle term for the racist left and the racist white, for the term meaning black people. And that the true definition of the term woke actually means